Please be seated.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. Welcome back to Stratford County Superior Court. So, ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes, we're going to begin the proceedings in this case by taking what's called a view. So we are going to go to a location in Rochester where the events that are involved in this case took place. Before we do that, let me explain a little bit about what a view is and what is expected of you during that view. The reason for a view is fairly straightforward. During the course of a trial, you're going to hear people talking about incidents which took place at a particular location. And the idea is that that testimony will make more sense to you if you first have an opportunity to see that location yourselves and get an idea of the layout and where things are located. So your obligation on the view is to look as carefully as you can and remember what you see as well as you can. There are a couple of important rules I have to tell you, however, first. First, you may not ask questions on the view. So you're not allowed to ask questions. If you do so, neither of the parties is permitted to answer your questions. Second, you're not allowed to take any notes or measurements while you're on the view. And third, you're not allowed to go back on your own later to that location to have a second look at it. This is the only chance you'll get to see this location. You're not allowed to go back on your own and view it again. And finally, and this is a very important rule, you're not allowed to talk amongst yourselves or with anyone else about what you see on the view, your impressions about the location, etc. This is a more specific instance of a general rule that I'm going to tell you later in my instructions, and you're going to hear me say this many times during this case. And that is that you're not to discuss the facts of this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else until the case is over, until you're back in the jury room deliberating at the end of this case. And that'll be after you've heard all the testimony and my instructions on the law. So you're not to have conversations amongst yourselves about the trial during the course of the trial. That can be a very hard instruction to follow because there's a natural instinct you're going to have when we take breaks to want to say, hey, how do you think it's going? Or what did you think of that witness? Or, ooh, what do you think about that? You're not allowed to do that, all right? So when you're on breaks or when you're on the bus coming back to the courthouse, talk about other things. Talk about the weather, talk about the Celtics. Don't talk about the case, all right? All right, so what's going to happen? In a few minutes, you're all going to get loaded onto a bus, and we're going to travel together to that location. Once there, you're going to take a look around. The lawyers might point out particular things to you at the location that they want you to see. Pay careful attention. However, you are not limited to only look at the things that they point out to you. You're welcome to look at whatever you want to look at. Counsel, is there an issue? Do we need to just... This may sometimes happen in this trial. It's been pointed out to me that I've actually failed to do something I was supposed to do, and so I want to correct it right now while we do it. Before we started all this, I was supposed to have you first sworn in as jurors. That's the first step in this process, where you become officially jurors by being sworn in. So I'm going to ask my clerk, Madam Clerk, will you please swear in the members of the jury? Yes, we'll do that when we come back.
All right, so members of the jury, will you please stand and will you all please raise your right hand? Do you all solemnly swear or affirm that you will carefully consider the evidence and the law presented to you in this case, and that you will deliver a fair and true verdict as to the charges against the defendant? If so, please say I do. Thank you. You may all be seated.
Okay. So now technically you're now officially jurors on this case. I'm not going to reread all the instructions I just gave you. I'm going to trust that you can remember what I just told you. And some of those instructions you're going to hear again later anyway, so I'm not worried about that. But let me just finish up with what's going to happen in a few minutes. So as I said, we're going to get on the bus. We're going to travel to this location. Once we're there, you can take a look around. The lawyers may point out things to you they want you to pay close attention to, but you're not limited to only look at those things. And I will tell you this, an important thing to understand is what you see on the view is evidence in this case, just as much as any of the other evidence you're going to hear in this case. So that means that what you see on the view can be considered by you when the time comes to render your verdict at the end of this trial. So it's extremely important that you pay close attention to what you see on the view, that you observe, and you observe carefully. It is your view, so you can stay on the scene as long as you like, and you'll be given a full opportunity to see everything there and get a good perspective. I request of you all that when we're at the view, though, it would be helpful if you try to stay fairly close together. I don't want individuals wandering off on their own. Please don't spread out too much. Then if you do, you'd have a hard time hearing what's going on if the lawyers want to say something to you. So that's important. During the view, as we're traveling there to the view and back, we're going to be in the charge of the court officers and the sheriffs. If anyone should attempt to talk to you about this case during your time on the view, I want you to please notify a deputy sheriff or a court officer immediately. One last thing I want to mention to you, you probably already noticed, there is going to be media coverage of this trial. As you can see, there is a camera here in the courtroom recording this, and there may be live streaming, I'm told, of this trial. I want you to know several things about that. First, the media has been instructed, and I have every reason to think that they're professionals and will follow my instruction, that they are not to film you, members of this jury. So your images and likenesses will not be put out there in the public eye. Second, I'm instructing you, and this will also be part of my general instructions later, that you're not to view any media coverage about this case. So you're prohibited from going home and watching any of the live stream. If you come across articles or reports about this, you're to disregard those. And also, because of the media coverage, it just makes it more likely that members of your family or friends might approach you and want to talk to you about what they saw and ask you questions. I'm instructing you, you're not to engage in any of those conversations. All right? So if anyone approaches you and wants to talk to you about this trial because what they saw on the media, you're to not engage in those conversations, to immediately disengage. Okay? Very good. Now, at this point, before we go and get on the bus, the attorneys are given an opportunity to give what's called a preview statement. A preview statement is simply a short statement given by the lawyer to assist you in understanding what they want you to observe at the view. These preview statements are not the opening statements. Those will come later after we get back. And importantly, an important thing to remember is these preview statements, just like the opening statements you're going to hear later, are not themselves evidence. These are things that the lawyers are telling you they'd like you to pay attention to, but they are not themselves evidence. All right? So with that, we'll now turn to the preview statements. Attorney Barth, you may proceed.
Good morning. So it's been a week and a half, and maybe you've forgotten my crazy Swedish name. My name is Joakim Barth. It's Joachim. Together with my co-counsel, Sarah Diola, I'm presenting the evidence for the state, appearing on behalf of the state of New Hampshire. And over the next course of several days, we'll be presenting the evidence to support the charging documents. The view. First, where? We're going out to an address, a residential address, actually two, in Rochester on Summer Street. These are adjacent addresses. Number 43 has 2 units in it, and the victim, Kyle Violet, lived there. He lives there with his family, the details of which we'll talk about later. Immediately next door, separated by a driveway, is 41. And there, Jason Levesque lived there with his family. And we'll talk about more details of that later. That's where we're going. We're going to go out front. We're not going to go into either of those residences. We're going to go out front because that's where the events underlying these charges took place. A shooting in the street right out front. of these residences. Why? Why are we going out there? The judge touched on some of these issues. Look, we expect probably 6 videos to be introduced, 6 videos that capture really significant events in this case. The part of a confrontation, literally the actual shooting itself. But here's the catch. These videos come from different angles. They integrate, they overlap. But literally, one is looking up the driveway from 41, one is looking down from the corner of 41, a porch view from 41, and a bay window view from 43, kind of at an angle. And so it's true that these videos overlap, they link together, they can form a cohesive picture. But the theory about going out on this view is, some people learn differently. Some people could look at these in sequence and it all comes together. The theory is other people are visual learners, and that going out there and seeing a panoramic that allows you then to integrate and overlap these videos more effectively will serve you and a clear understanding of the evidence best. And so when we go out there, we're primarily, from the state's perspective, going to be pointing out things like line of sight, distances, perspectives, that we hope will assist during the course of this trial when you receive other forms of evidence. What's the catch? The catch is this, the judge also alluded to this. You're going out there without the benefit of opening statements that give you an overview from both sides' two perspectives about the important issues and facts in this case. And so you're going out there a little disembodied from a coherent narrative. All I'll ask you to do is take clear images in your mind and keep in mind that what you see out there is in fact evidence. And it's going to be evidence that we're going to ask you to draw from, to incorporate into the greater body of evidence in this case to return a guilty verdict at the end. So it's important. Again, we can't tell you the full story yet. We'll do that when we get back. So we've got that. Again, we can't answer your questions, but both sides are going to just point out issues and just ask you the importance of it. This is evidence. And see you out there and then back here. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Sisti.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good morning. Sorry. Good morning. Good seeing y'all. Sometimes we lose jurors over the week and a half, 10 days, and if you guys can count, you know that we did. We did lose a juror this morning. So it's very important that you listen to the judge's instructions and keep it together. We can't afford to lose too many more jurors. Let me start by saying thank you again for your service so far. You're about to get into the meat of the case. And the meat of the case starts this morning. The meat of the case and the first reasonable doubts that are going to come to your mind are going to be developed this morning through this view. And I can't emphasize that enough. A lot of people, slight it off as some kind of a field trip. This is not a field trip. This is the real deal. This is just as important as any of the medical evidence that will come in during the course of this trial. It's just as important or more important than testimony, even from some of the individuals that will be testifying. Okay. The prosecutor told you that these are adjacent homes. They are adjacent homes. He did define one of the individuals as being a victim. That will be up to you to determine whether he was a victim at the end of this case. I want you to understand that, okay? We take issue with that starting now. We take issue with that starting on the view. And I can't push that hard enough. You were asked if you could be open-minded and if you could decide this case without bias or prejudice. And the true test is about to begin. When we go out there, you're going to have to understand a couple things. Last April, there was a freak snowstorm. I don't know if you folks remember that. It was a wild, wet, terrible snowstorm. And it actually, I think, went on for, I don't know, overnight even. It went on for a few hours, a lot of hours. And it accumulated a lot of snow. Now, there's been snow, but there's not been accumulation like that. There's been a lot of melting. Okay. So when we get out there, just try to envision the area, snow covered too. Okay. One other thing, we're going out in the daylight. All right. This thing took place a little bit after 10 o'clock at night. All right. So keep that kind of a context going too. This is a nighttime situation. All right. So keep an eye around. Take a look at where we are. I have to emphasize with you that you're going to get some really good video captured on some Ring cameras and other things that evening. It's actually going to be very helpful to you. And some of the video we were able to actually enhance. And by enhance, I mean blow it up, zero in on certain areas, so that you'll get an even better, look at what's going on. But it is important to draw the big picture this morning, the layouts. We'll fill in the blanks. It's our job to fill in the blanks. It's your job to get the outline. Okay, we'll plug it in as we go. But I got to tell you, I can't emphasize enough. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. All right. I know you can't ask questions out there, and I know you may want to. And I got to tell you, we'd probably love to answer them. But there'll be a time and a place. And, we get to do openings, and we get to do examinations of witnesses. And hopefully we'll be able to fill in those blanks for you as we move through this trial. That's our job. Okay? Your job is to remain neutral. Your job is to remain open-minded. And you got to really turn it up as far as observation. Because by the time you get to the deliberation room, okay, it's not going to be 1 day or 2 days from now. It's probably going to be into next week. So try to really lock down on this. And if you can, we'd really appreciate it. Jason's depending on you to stay open-minded and neutral. You got to do it. And we're going to get going on it right now. And the judge told you this. I can't emphasize it enough. This is your view. This isn't our view. This is your view. If you need time to look at something, that bus doesn't leave until you're done. Okay? This is where you guys are the boss now. Okay? And you get to take over certain parts of the case. One of them is today. One's today. And one's going to be at the end of this trial. Deliberation room. When you decide the fate of Jason Levesque. So take advantage of those two opportunities. All right? And we're going to get out there. We'll point stuff out to you. It'll all make sense as we move through this. But I want to thank you again. Thanks for hanging in there. We got a while to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Sisti. All right. So at this point, I think we are ready to commence with the view. So I'd ask the court officers to start that process, please.
Please rise.
Anything we need to discuss before we get out there?
Just wondering what the,
Oh, my understanding, do you want to approach? Yeah, thank you.